Welcome to Tuff Teams.
Thanks, Ellie. Happy to be here.
Okay, so you you've hit the 1 month mark. You're past it now. I think this week, no, last week was your one month mark. So you're still relatively fresh, but also as we were just talking about, ready to rock. Um, so I have some questions about you and your life, and then some questions about your first impressions of Tuff. But to start it off, you and your family just moved across the country from the big city to tiny town. Has it been culture shock in the best way? Like what give us the big highlights of the move.
Yeah. So we moved Los Angeles to Boston and then from Boston to Maine because we knew that we wanted to end up in Maine, but it's not easy to find a house. Like real estate market is tight here. It's like a million people or so in the state. It's a small, big state, geographically small population. Culture shock in the best way for sure, in that like I had always dreamed of finding a way to be able to like live up here and like obviously like do something digital marketing oriented. And with the rise of remote work, that dream is now a reality. So nothing but positive and amazing things to say. And being able to kind of like dive into this sort of like national, international, like brands that we're kind of advertising for, but in this small state is a really cool juxtaposition.
hmm hmm What's what's the one thing that you miss most about LA and the one thing that you would like never give up having been in your small town now?
It's such a cliche answer, but the Mexican food, and I guess the sushi too, although the seafood here is amazing, but the like international cuisine in Los Angeles is just, so you cannot beat it. It's the best, and it's very it's alive. I mean, it's like one of the liveliest places I've ever been. It's just everything is happening there. It's like at the center of so many different cultures and sort of industries. And here is pretty much the polar opposite of that. But the people here are like super cool, super down to earth. A lot of people have done the same thing that we have, like moved to like a more remote area, lots of land. The air is always fresh. Nature's like, I mean, I'm literally watching this like little, I don't know what it's called, like a group of baby loons in my backyard. And I've been like watching them grow up, and it's like the coolest thing ever, all while working. So, like, yeah, I mean, I could not give that up.
Yeah, you gave me a little sneak peek of your through the window view over your computer view the other day, and had to have a pond like just over your computer screen. That's pretty dreamy.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
I'm going to use the food talk as a segue. We were talking about worst jobs yesterday in our ad creative team weekly. There were some really funny answers, and yours was cracking me up about your experiences as a busboy in a restaurant. Um, Assuming that peeking behind the curtain of the restaurant scene hasn't ruined your restaurants for you forever. Like what is if you could like only go to one type of restaurant or have one type of like takeout food, would it be Mexican or would it be something else?
It would definitely be sushi, because sushi, I just like, I can't even, it's almost impossible to make at home and like source the ingredients.
Yeah.
And I love sushi, and like I feel like it's always changing. And
Mhm.
Mexican food, you like with Amazon, like you can, there's lots of other resources now where you can buy the spices online, and like the produce is a little bit tougher to come by. My wife's half Mexican, so like I have a taste for like authentic Mexican too. So like that
Mhm.
also like Mexican's a close second for sure, but sushi without a doubt. I
Mhm.
love good sushi.
Is there like a roll or like what's the thing that you order every time you go to the sushi restaurant?
Good question. Uni for sure. If they have uni, I'll
hmm
always order uni because it's just
hmm
so like strange tasting and amazing. Um,
hmm
Toro, it's just, and these are like the like bougier sushis, but they're just so good. Like I they taste like otherworldly. Those
hmm
two for sure.
hmm Okay. Okay. Noted. Um, all right. Changing topics a little bit. Moving Map Pictures,
Yeah.
a past venture, founder, executive producer. Tell us about Moving Map Pictures and um, Yeah, the adventure of business ownership.
Yeah, it was very, very LA, the whole experience. Like we moved out to LA, my wife Kat and I, and we started this business in New York and then like moved out to LA to kind of like really give it a go. And we must have done like three different like we were doing a web series at first, which transformed into like higher production value branded content, which then went to stop motion animation. And that's kind of where I discovered all these kind of like startup and scale up companies that are, a million to 10 million in funding that are advertising online. And stop motion itself wasn't like the ideal mechanism to advertise products via,
Mhm.
Facebook and Instagram ads, but that kind of like turned the light bulb on to like performance marketing and like this whole world of performance creative, which is by far like my favorite thing that I've worked on because it's so I was a psych major in school and it sounds so weird to like compare psychology to advertising because like advertising can be like it can use like the worst parts of psychology, but it can also use like the best parts of it too. And so to be able to like look at an ad and kind of like try to deduce like why human beings are receptive to that ad versus something else, I think is like one of the most interesting things you can do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the same things about it. It's so cool, like having all these theories and hypotheses about like how to make an ad perform, and then getting the data feedback and being like, oh, but I didn't think about that. Like it makes sense why that one was the one that got the highest click-through rate. Like that whole it's it definitely like thinking about it in this sort of gamified way is so fun.
Totally, 100%. And like, because you have so many people, it's not like tens of thousands, it's like millions of people at your disposal that are kind of like in your like sample size. You're really able to get this like large scale view of humans, human nature. I mean, it's fascinating.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, speaking, I'm gonna use you're just like alley-ooping me with segues. Speaking of like human and human nature, uh, it really feels like you've lived a dozen past lives. You produced a documentary. Tell me
Yeah.
about that. What was that
So
like?
I almost produced my own. It was like me and this other guy neck and neck to like win this competition
Mm,
for like it was like a Paramount produced documentary. And that was like my dream. Like I was like so close to achieving my dream. They went the other way because it was a basketball documentary. Um,
oh,
and it was the war about the Warriors and they were like in the NBA finals. So like, I guess it was just an easy decision. But the other one I worked on was called Mole Man, it was about a guy who was like a savant builder who like I think he was like atypically diagnosed autistic. So like he wasn't diagnosed officially, but like that was kind of like the
hmm,
consensus of like,
hmm,
something that was influencing the way his brain worked. And so he built this superstructure in his backyard using no mortar or like nails or anything, just like stacking things because of like the way he understood weight and like the weight distribution. So it was about him. He was also like kind of like a cat burglar because he'd go to these like abandoned buildings all around. It was Butler, Pennsylvania, which is like so rural. And so he would go into these super interesting abandoned places, like take stuff from the abandoned houses and like use it to build this superstructure. So I basically got to spend like months in the rural woods of Pennsylvania, not or maybe trespassing on these like abandoned properties, like hanging out with this guy, hanging out with the director, talking to him, like trying to like understand his brain and his thought process, and just like watching him build this superstructure, all while his family tried to navigate like he was in his 70s, like what to do when he's older because
hmm,
he didn't
hmm.
have any kind of like care or anything like that. So yeah, I mean it was like one of the coolest like Wild West oriented things I've been a part of.
That sounds really interesting. Do you like have any contact to any of those people at all anymore? Or was it like a like wrap the project, like thank you,
Yeah,
bye,
no,
rural Pennsylvania?
the guy I worked with, he's like I think he's like 10 years older than me, sort of like a mentor. We're still very close
Hmm,
friends.
hmm,
He used to come visit us in Maine in the summer. Like we'd all go on a trip together. He works at some like giant like branded content house, like
hmm, hmm,
massive budgets, like super cool, like installations at like Comic-Con for
hmm,
Netflix, like
hmm,
that kind of
hmm.
stuff. He sadly does not make documentaries anymore. So I think that was kind of like, I know he wants to, but yeah. And then the guy, Ron, he doesn't, he has a house phone, the subject of the documentary. He will call me randomly and just want to like,
Really?
yeah, like because he writes all the phone numbers on a wall. And so sometimes he'll like see a number and be like, oh, and then he'll like call that person. I won't hear from him for like months, sometimes years, and then I'll get a call from him. And then there he is wanting to chat.
That's so fascinating. I imagine that like a documentary, like experiencing like creating a documentary, filming a documentary really just forms friendships and relationship bonds like unlike anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I mean, it really is. It's kind of like any like job where you're like, it's like physical labor, but it's also like using your brain, like anything like that. I feel like immediately bonds people together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, bringing it all the way back to present day, Tuff is like by no stretch of the imagination one of your first places of work, but like, is there anything about joining Tuff, first impressions, that were surprising or unexpected to you?
Surprising or unexpected? That's a good question. I think I said this to someone. I think maybe it was Eduardo in the interview process, but he was asking about like I think that there's like a real sense of like advocacy and like collective like creative and this not a surprise necessarily, but it's always nice to see when there's like internal advocacy for like the people that work together, but also like external advocacy like for our
Hmm.
partners. There's a lot of that that goes on at Tuff. And there's a lot of pride in the work that everyone does, and I think that's super cool. And there's a lot like everybody has a ton of like well-deserved responsibility, which I also think is super cool. And that's really what was
Hmm.
most intriguing to me. I think about like the size and like the scale that Tuff is at now. It's just kind of like there's a lot going on, lots of interesting things. Like you can really like dip your toe in different things. Sorry, I'm gonna cough.
We can have Travis cut this out.
Yeah, terrible timing.
Tis the
Must have
season.
like a piece of dust in my throat. But yeah, just to kind of bring it back, maybe like say a couple of those lines over again. Just that level of like everybody's kind of marching towards the same goal. It's remote, so that's especially
Hmm.
hard, but it's not at the same time because like there's a lot of communication amongst the various different teams and advocacy for people as human beings, but also like as employees, which is really nice to
Hmm.
see.
Hmm. That's awesome. Tough, there's like so many big, exciting goals for like Tough and the creative team. What are you like most looking forward to like being a part of when it comes to all of our goals and big, exciting things in 2023?
I mean, I there's a lot. Okay, like I'll phrase it in a way that like there's a lot of excitement around like the creative service,
Hmm.
and I think that's super cool. Like maybe people come to us as like a creative first agency. It's somewhere out in the universe.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's obviously up to Ellen, but like if someone was referred to Tuff because of how much we knocked creative out of the park and they're like, I'd like to try that too. I mean, how cool would that be?
Hmm.
That would be
Hmm.
amazing.
I think that that's like, I want to see that happening within the next couple of months. I
Me
think we can
too.
crush
I
it.
think like let's do it.
Yeah.
Like with
Yeah.
Q1, let's crush it. I think that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. If you're out there watching this video and you're like, man, I really just need amazing creative, you know who to call.
Yeah. Tap the Tuff team. We're
Yeah.
here.
Awesome. Max, I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for being here. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Ellie.